Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Need to make sure everything's working right. So, welcome back. We haven't done this book club since I think our last meeting was in November. Wanted to skip the holidays, get back into the swing of things, and start back up after y'all had some time to implement some strategies going into the spring semester. So, that's what we're going to start with. I'd like to hear from you guys. So, this is actually our third book club, and it's directly tied to our QEP. So, we've had the on-course seminars, we've had this book club with the on-course book. We also did the Growth Mindset Coach book, and we did the Hitting Pause book. So, how have you changed since attending the seminars? One thing, anybody? Adrian? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hit all the buttons, Okay, so I like the hitting pause, and I mean, I might be using this incorrectly, but even today, it kind of showed up. So, backstory, got a screw in my tire, 7:15 this morning, got to work. Somebody's going to come and look at it during my 8 o'clock class, right? So lecture. It gets to be about 8:45, and I was talking about Chat GPT, right, and how we could use it responsibly and what that looks like and all of the things. And we showed them where, they have access to the one we have on campus. So I get a phone call, tire guy's there, right? So hold on, I'll be right back. I was going to show him where I parked. As I'm leaving, I hear my students say, I don't know what Chat GPT is. Can somebody explain it to me? I assumed that they knew what I was talking about. So that pause that happened because I had to walk out and show somebody where my car was, they started like, because they had to hurry up and explain it before I got back. So I waited outside the door when I got back because it didn't take 5 seconds, to show them where my car was. And they did such a good job of like explaining it and like giving relative stories. So I don't know if that's exactly what that strategy is, but today it worked really well. Like, and then I went back and then we talked about it, and I didn't bring it up that they didn't know it because I didn't want them to feel bad, right? Because they had fixed it. And so we just proceeded on. But I think maybe we need to give them breaks without us to have good discussion. Yeah. So maybe we need to walk outside more often.
Well, and that was going back to the Hitting Pause book. That was the whole purpose of the pause. What questions do they have? What did you not explain fully that you could further explain? But that takes some feedback from the students. Would they have ever asked the question if you hadn't stopped and walked out of the room?
I don't think so. I think that they felt like they were the dumb ones because I was just talking about it. And I mean, some people were nodding, and they knew. I mean, there's a lot of computer programmers in there. So I was just like, so I waited a beat or two before I walked back in, just to hear what went on. So I think I might have to run out here or there in that class a little more.
Or we can just remind students that they can always ask a question. There are no dumb questions because everybody is on a different level. They have to believe in what they know and have confidence in themselves to be able to say, hey, I'm not real sure what that is. Can you explain it further? And that's one of the things that the on-course book talks about in detail, is about empowering the student to believe in their self-worth. And many of our students don't, just because of their backgrounds. They don't have the positive reinforcement that's required to build a good self-image. And so that's one of the things that in the classroom we have to start helping them do. Leah, you have a comment?
Yes, in alignment with what Adrian said and what you're talking about is that our students don't know what they don't know. And it's a really good skill to be able to self-reflect. And that's not coming in, they don't have this skill ready to plug in. So having opportunities to self-reflect and realize like, ooh, I made a 75 on this quiz. Is it because I'm stupid? No, no, that's not a reflection of who you are as a person. That's a reflection of, hey, you missed these questions that all had something to do with each other. Let's go investigate that. And so helping them identify what they don't know, but also a lot of students come in thinking that they have to make A's. And if they don't make A's, then their self-worth is damaged. And so they're embarrassed to speak up in front of the teacher. So I think it's great that Miss Champagne just accidentally happened upon this conversation and also showed a little bit of humanity, like things happen, I got to run out, or admitting when you make a mistake or when you don't know something, leading by example, like, oh, I don't actually know the answer to that question. Let's look it up.
Right. Anybody else want to talk about ways that they have changed or things they have done in their classroom that came from attending all of this professional development that we're trying to do here on campus? Anybody else? Okay, Leah.
I don't want to talk the whole time, I swear. What really resonated with me was the growth mindset, and I implemented it in my classroom with growth assignments. I thought that the group assignment, as a science teacher, we have to give a teamwork assessment. And so I used that as a growth opportunity. They have unlimited attempts to turn this assignment in, but each time you turn it in, you should be improving. And so the assignments build, and it's okay if you don't make a good grade on it the first time. You can fix it and make it better. So implementing that growth attitude in a low risk assessment where it's like, yeah, yes, it is a grade, but you have unlimited attempts. So if you mess it up the first time, that's okay. We're going to work on it and we're going to improve.
Till you get it right. Yeah. So did anybody notice the similarities between the fixed and growth mindset and the creator and victim mindset that OnCourse talked about? Nobody picked up on that? It's basically the same thing. Dr. Barbay? We can't hear you. Okay. We'll give Dr. Barbay a minute to see if she can get her microphone working.
I think this might have made a difference.
Yes, it did.
Well, I didn't exactly make the connection between fixed and growth mindsets and victim and creator mindset, but I did kind of get on the edge of that by having the students, because I found that one of the 4 core skills that the students in my classes seem to fall down on a lot is critical thinking. They have this idea that critical thinking means you're talking negatively about something, whereas I want to help them to understand that critical thinking means not taking things at face value, to look into the situation and see both sides. And so, in fact, one book that I have read that I plan to introduce to students is related to the fixed and growth mindsets. It's called the Scout mindset, which is compared and can be compared and contrasted to the soldier mindset. The Scout mindset is where you go into a situation and you're finding out what the situation is, but you are not making a quick judgment one way or the other. So what I brought into the students was to just to introduce them to the idea, was to ask them, uh, did they think that they were that they were creators or were they victims? And we talked about what that meant in relation to the on-course textbook and the ideas. So we were looking at the chapter on personal responsibility or self-responsibility. And one of the first things that I did, and the students seemed to enjoy it and get into it, was to look at the case study in critical thinking on page 46 in the textbook. And actually, in the on-course workshop that we had, the moderator uh, actually brought several people into, like, they formed a little panel, and they did a role play. They took on the roles of, and I was especially interested in this because there was one of the characters was a Professor Freud. Uh, he's an instructor, or she, uh, instructor for a psychology class. And Professor Freud, to remind people of what the story was about, published in the course syllabus a statement that students could not pass the class unless they turned in a research paper on time, 12 noon on the due date. And some of the other characters were uh, Mary, who was Professor Freud's admin assistant, who told a student, Kim, who was featured in the story, over the phone the day before the due date of this paper that Dr. Freud or Professor Freud would probably allow a grace period, that she wouldn't be really so persnickety as to say it is only, if it's not in on 12 noon, at 12 noon, I will give you a few more minutes. The student, Kim, actually, because of a series of unfortunate events, overslept on the day that the paper was due. Her husband, Arnold, who was portrayed in the story as being uncomfortable with Kim being a college student and improving her chances for success, he hid Kim's car keys, so she had to take the bus, and she planned apparently to turn in the assignment the day before, but she didn't have her car, so she was waiting at a bus stop, and just so happened one of her classmates from the course, Cindy, said, "Well, you have a lot of time. Why don't you come to this party with me tonight?" And so she had a car, so Kim said she went along with it. And but then the party went on until early in the morning of the day of the due date. And Cindy was reluctant to bring Kim back to her house so she could work on her paper and make sure that it was ready to turn in. So we have a variety of people who have a perhaps partial responsibility for the fact that when Kim brought her paper in, like 15 minutes late, Professor Freud said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm not taking it. It was a flat 12 noon due time, and so you failed the class." So the question that my class was talking about was to read the story and get to know some of the characters, and then to bring in a connection with another one of my core skills, empirical and quantitative skills, to either rank in order who had responsibility, the most responsibility for Kim's failing the class, and also create a pie chart assigning a percentage of responsibility. And before we did that, as we were leading up to completing that assignment, we talked in class about what is self-responsibility and how is accepting self-responsibility a key to being successful in life and in school. And I found in that discussion that the students tended to say, "Oh, it wasn't Kim's fault. It was Professor Freud. She should have been more, she should have been kinder and more tolerant. Or no, it was Mary, her assistant, who made the mistake of speaking for Professor Freud when maybe she knew that Professor Freud was very strict. So we looked at what a mindset is, and a lot of students I found are not really very sophisticated in knowing what it is. And this was brought out in the chapter that basically a mindset, whether it's fixed, growth, victim, creator, it's a group of beliefs or attitudes, and it affects how we perceive a particular situation. So then we contrasted what is the difference between a victim mindset and a creator mindset. And the students seem to be interested in opening up their minds to figuring out, do I think like a victim or do I think like a creator? And they were especially interested in the story of that was brought out in the chapter, Rosa Parks, who was a very famous person who was well known in the civil rights movement in the 20th century for not giving up her seat on a bus. And people seem to think, oh, well, she was just tired. And so she didn't have to move. But Miss Park spoke right up and said, no, I'm not physically tired. I work every day. What I'm tired of is giving in to this unfair situation where I have to, and people like me have to sit at the back of the bus. That is wrong. So these are some of the things that I'm personally different now in my classes is maybe having more tolerance when students or people that I encounter uh, take either a victim or a creator mindset, and I'm observing the differences in how they act and how they speak. And so my plans going forward, if we talk about how we're changing as a result of exposure to the on-course ideas, is I am going to encourage students, and we're going to talk about what it means to master the creator language and making sure that we emphasize more our inner guides rather than our inner critics or inner defenders, so that we're not so much, this is where I stand, this is a line in the sand, I'm not crossing it, and I dare you to get me to cross it. So I'm plan to incorporate them with the class. We're developing a low stakes assignment, extra credit assignment that incorporates some of the ideas in that critical about the critical thinking story and also the self responsibility. So that's my view.
Yes, and I think we have an opportunity here with our large dual credit population that comes on our campus. Those students often, because of their home life, we talked about their self-image. They don't have the opportunity to get a good self-image, and then they go into an early college high school where their counselors and teachers at the high school are building them up, but also, in my opinion, not allowing them to face the consequences when they make the wrong decisions or choose, to hang out in the Ruby Fuller building instead of going to class, or come in late because they stopped at the cafe. And those are the types of things that as instructors in the classroom, as faculty in the classrooms, when we have policies and procedures, we have to stick to those policies so that the students learn to take accountability, to take personal responsibility for those choices that they're making. And hopefully by the time that they're leaving us, going on to the next phase in their life, which hopefully would be a 4-year institution with their Associate of Arts degree, they have more personal responsibility. They're able to critically think better to make good choices in that creator mindset. So anybody else have a story they want to share? Got a lot of faculty on here today. We have some nursing people. Anybody from nursing want to talk about your students? see any. So I had told y'all in November, I wasn't going to prepare a PowerPoint or anything, that I wanted this to be a much more of a discussion than what we have had in the past, because I wanted to see if what we're doing is making an impact on our students and making an impact on the faculty. You know, are y'all finding that what we're doing in these book club seminars and what we've developed for the QEP to help integrate better teaching to student success, is it helping? Wayne Wells.
Yes, I just want to speak from the aspect of the correctional ed in
Okay.
our department with using OnCourse. What the guys all say, pretty much all say that we always hit emotional intelligence very, very heavily. And I heard you mention about our early college students. Oftentimes, people may not understand in a penal institution, the guys have a difficult time being able to go back to what they call their housing units, which is, their living quarters, and be able to study and not be distracted by what's going on behind them or around them. So we focus a lot. I know in the classes that I teach at the federal prison, we focus a lot on emotional intelligence and being able to adapt and adjust to your situations or circumstances and not. I always use I don't know how many of you follow the um, Die Hard episodes with Bruce Willis, and the very first one was with Hans Gruber. And I always tell them, I said, I asked them first of all, how many of you are aware of that movie? And they all raise hands. I said, well, Hans was considered the bad guy, but he told Bruce Willis, he said, never let your emotions overrule your intellect. And so when he said that, it made me stop. Okay, never let your emotions overrule your intellect. So I'll take that, and then we'll engage in dialogue, and I'll ask him, "What do you think he was saying? What do you think he meant when he said that?" And so they'll come up with their different ideas of what he meant. But to make a long story short, that is something that we hit heavily because in the setting that we're in is quite different than being here on campus or teaching our students who are from the early college background. And like I said, many of our traditional students. Another thing that we focus on is the ability for them to be able to manage their time. And I provide for them part of that comes out of the book, the planner, the weekly planner that gives them an opportunity to sit down and say, okay, at this time, I need to be able to do this. I need to study for philosophy, or I need to study for math, or I need to study for history. And so that keeps them in alignment. The only bad thing about it is that they don't get to keep their books. And the OnCourse book is a powerful tool. I mean, I wish it would have been around when I first started college many, many years ago. It's an excellent, excellent choice of to keep in for a resource. And so the guys know that when they take this class, it's setting them up for success, or can be setting up for success in the other classes to follow.
Yes. Well, that's an interesting perspective coming from the correctional institution, because again, totally different population. They have a structured day to begin with. They have to get up at a certain time. They have to go to bed at a certain time. They go to eat at a certain time. Their whole day is mapped out. Finding the time to be able to study for different classes and do assignments related to those classes. So I have a couple questions, Wayne. So in the prison, so they can't take their textbooks back to their housing units with them. Are they able to do?
They can take them with them, but they can't keep them. They are turned in, like our students here on the campus.
Okay.
If for example, if they purchase their book, they can keep it, but our students, the books must be turned in at the end of the
of the
semester,
semester.
which is part of the Second Chance Pell guideline. Now, moving to the full implementation of Pell, we'll see if that will be different, because most of the ones that I teach, they always say, "Hey, can I keep this book? Because there's some things in this book that I would love to be able to go back to and refer to." And I said, "No, a part of the Second Chance Pell guideline is that your textbook is loaned to you, and you have to, turn it in once the semester's over." But during the class, as classes go on during the semester, they can take those back to the housing units with them.
That's good to know. Uh, Joanna has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we don't have any early college, high school students, but we do use some of the on-course material with our students. Like we've used the late assignment several times, and mainly our level 1. And most of the time they blame the student for turning the paper in late.
Yeah, I would blame the student too. Student's responsibility to turn their work in on time. And again, there's really is no right answer here. Yes, we could blame her husband. He should have never hidden her keys. But again, why is she still staying in that situation? There's all kinds of different pieces to this one scenario about the late paper. And the choices the student made heavily influence the outcome of what happens. She chooses to give in to peer pressure and go with her friends. So that's just one opinion. So anyone else? Okay, we're about halfway through our time here. I do want to mention that in the back of the on-course textbook, the green pages. So has anybody looked at the green pages? So the book has actually 9 chapters that are the first half, or the first 100, 200, and 319 pages. The last 100 or so pages, I call them the green pages because they're all lined, they're edged in green, is the study skills. It's a toolbox. And this goes back to what Wayne was saying. This is good for students after they finish the on-course. They finish their Learning Frameworks course. If they keep this book, they can use some of the things that are in this portion of the book. There's a section on study skills, on test taking, assessing your study skills, how to do lasting learning, talks about the core learning system, how to get the most out of what you're reading, how to take notes during lectures, organizing your study materials. So there's a whole bunch of good ideas to help students do better and be more successful in those green pages. And so one of the things that I would ask that you guys do moving forward, you're implementing strategies and things from all of the book clubs that we've done from the first 9 chapters here. But look at some of these study skill activities and see how you can incorporate that into your classwork so that students are learning how to read for better understanding, or to take notes after a lecture in a more effective manner. Maybe a short assignment where you have them read and summarize something. That could be in an English class. There's different things you can do within your discipline to help students utilize some of these study skill strategies that are in the back of this book. Anyone else want to talk about some strategies they used in the classroom? Are we all still standing up in front of the room lecturing? Is there anybody that all they're doing is standing in front of the room and lecturing? Mary Catherine.
Hi, I'm a little nervous about saying stuff because I'm like, perhaps I'm wrong, but I have stopped lecturing quite as much. I have them before I introduce a topic. I put up a question on the board and I say, spend like 10 minutes writing your own opinion, your own response. And then that usually means they give me a bit more of an intelligent response. It gives me 10 minutes to kind of mentally prep for the next part of the lecture. And so far it's gone well. And the way I incentivize it is, so they'll actually write it, is we're going to compare your answers from the start of the semester to the end of the semester. So that means they need to keep it. And so far that's meant that everyone in my class, well, they don't always write notes, they do respond to all these questions because I'm gonna read them at the end of the semester. It works out pretty well.
Yeah, and as a new teacher and teaching for the first time, you've got the opportunity to try all kinds of different things and see what works for you and for your classes, because you teach a subject that's a little bit different. Some of your classes are very hands-on, where they're actually drawing or painting or doing something where there is no lecture component. I mean, you talk about how to draw and you talk about and you demonstrate. And so this is a good opportunity for you to grow your own teaching repertoire. Dr. Resvan. Okay, we can't hear you.
Okay, so hello everyone. So what
Okay.
I always do is at the end, I tell them, okay, give me one thing that you take out of this class. Like, what did you learn today? Just one thing, like that one thing that you learned. And that makes them think, really, I sat in this, class. What did I learn? And then those that didn't, they kind of go through the things. Okay, I need to learn something. So even those who might have not been listening or might not have paid attention as much as they should have, still get something and leave the class with something. That's what I always do in my classes.
That's a good strategy. You need to go into the QEP space and write that a little paragraph that says that, so that other people like Mary Catherine, when they're looking in there, can see that and she can try it in her classroom.
And it helps. It really helps because some students they're sitting in the class but they're really not in the class. But when I ask that at the end, and like, it's not who wants to give me an answer one by one, okay, give me one thing and then leave. And I don't say, because sometimes in the past I would do notes, but then they would write something that was possibly even not related. So I tell them, tell me one thing, and then so they have to say something that really was said in the class, was taught in the class.
Anytime you have students write something and then they get to leave, you never know what you're going to get.
And it's always like mostly those that wanted to be polite, they would praise me. I said, I don't need a praise. I know I'm good. I need something about. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I want to encourage everyone to use the QEP space that, again, if you've logged into Blackboard Learn and gone to your organizations and watched the little video for your department, there's a collaboration space in there where you can put stuff. I want to see some stuff in there. Again, we're trying to change the culture of our campus. And it starts with just a couple of people. We've got 21 on the call today. We've got 4 or 5 that are participating, maybe 6 or 7, that have given us some feedback. The more we talk about this, the more comfortable we're going to get at sharing our ideas. Putting something out there that you write, you don't even have to put your name on it, I don't think. You could just put something out there. Nobody will know who wrote it. So if you're feeling that this is not a safe space for you, you can do that method to be able to share some of your ideas. I know you guys are doing some great things in the classroom. We need to start sharing those things. So anybody else have anything they want to say? All right, just a couple more words about encouraging our students to understand their self-worth. Christina Wilbur, Dr. Wilbur.
Hey there. Well, I'll share one thing that I'm doing this semester. It could turn out to be a total disaster. I don't know, but in my online class, my students are doing document analysis, and it's actually kind of complex skill to learn to do. And so their first 4 assignments are graded basically complete or incomplete. Just because I want them to at least attempt it, turn it in so that I can make some notes on it, so that they don't kind of get scared off from doing it. And then I also did it where if they didn't get it done, they can't move on to the second document assignment until they go back and do that one. And in these first 4, I'm not counting that one late, but once we get past these first 4, they're being graded late, all that other stuff. But I'm at least getting students kind of trying it, and rather than just looking at it and not even attempting it. So we'll see how that works at the end of the semester, but right now it's working okay. At least they're turning stuff in.
All right, so we have 2 more of these book clubs. So on April the 9th, 19th, 16th, when we have our last one, we're going to ask how it turned out, if it's working.
Well, let's hope so.
Because we all know everything you try in the classroom doesn't always work. We've all got a disaster story we can tell.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, somebody else had their hand up and then lowered it. Oh, that would be Adrian.
It keeps going on and off, so I don't know what's up with that. It was kind of piggybacking on what Christina was saying about her cumulative. It's almost like what I feel like is cumulative grading. So right now I have an issue with books. So the bookstore has a portion of my books on back order. And so, and I kind of had talked to Leah about this in the past. So spring is always a time where I use spring break as like the middle. And it's not technically the middle, but for me it is. And so what I've done, especially for the students that didn't have the book, but kind of everybody, I've kind of given them that week. Yes, we don't have school, but if you want to do some things and get them to me, I will then grade them, right? So I'm going to, of course, let the students that still are waiting on their books make up their work with an action plan. But I've told some other students, because this is the time they start being behind. Like we're 4 or 5 weeks in now officially. This is the time where we see the subset of students that are now behind, right? So today what I did right for the hour before this meeting is I took my online class and I audited, are they attending or not? And even if they're quote, quote, attending, because they click on things, are they really turning things in or not? And so that students, even though, you know, I had deadlines and all of those things, I'm going to give them to the end of spring break to do those 3 or 4 assignments. And if you want to work over spring break, then let's do it. And I think that kind of like re-energizes them, because I think 5 weeks in, if they're struggling, they may not proceed on, right? Now, somebody that's never logged in and doesn't care or whatever, that's a different story. But somebody that's an assignment or 2 behind, that might make the difference, I think, from my past experience, that they continue the class or not, right?
Right. Yeah, and spring break is the time that students are either going to come back and finish strong, or they're going to come back and that's the end. They're not going to do anything else. We lose a significant amount of students during spring break.
Yeah. And one of my students, we were kind of talking about this in class, and she's very funny. And she said, oh yeah, Miss Champagne, it'll be spring break, but you'll see her little green light on. And if you email her, she'll email you back. So be prepared. So in other words, you can't do shady things during spring break because she'll see them on the blackboard. Yes,
Right.
I will.
And making yourself available during spring break, you don't have to, But if you're just laying around the house not doing anything and a student emails you, it's a good idea to respond. Anyone else? Okay, so I want to challenge you guys again to put more things into the collaborative space, but also to continue building up the self-esteem of your students and letting them know that just because they didn't do well on an assignment doesn't mean that they're a failure. And that's, again, positive reinforcement, making sure that they see that, oh, well, you made a 70 on that test, but look, you made an 80 on this test. Progressive, small steps moving forward so that they know that they can be successful. Every student that we have is going to be different. And finding a connection with each of those students is going to help them be successful. We've all read the research. If students make a connection, a real connection, personal connection with one person on a college campus, they are about 60% more likely to succeed in college. And you see how many students a day. So we want to try and connect with as many of them as we can and make an impact in their life. Anybody else want to share anything today? We're at 41 minutes, which in a typical class, it's 50 minutes. So you stop at 40 minutes and say, do you have any questions? Is there anything else you want to talk about? Do I need to explain anything further? Or you ask, what did you learn today? Mary Catherine, yes, you may.
So in the book, they introduce different ideas of study skills to the students, but sometimes I'm not sure the best way to emphasize them, because like I'll tell them, right, this is simple stuff. If you don't want to do crazy study, you need to read your chapter at least twice, and then by then you've engaged with the material with the lecture that. But introducing, I always worry that maybe perhaps telling them to say, hey, this is how you study, this is how you synthesize your notes. I'm sure introducing them to it is good, but are there other ways that professors, having implemented like the Encore stuff, have seen improvement in their students' study skills? If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Dr. Barbay has her hand up. Maybe she has some insights for you.
Well, actually, I was thinking about what Dr. Rezvan had said about asking students to say out loud, or maybe even in writing, if they're not at ease at speaking out. Because a lot of the students in my classes, when I ask them to speak out, they speak so softly, I have to actually go to them so I can actually hear them. And they say, well, this isn't a speech class, so I don't have to talk so everybody can hear. And so we're going to work with that. But I wanted to say that I agree with Dr. Rezvan. Something I do is along the same lines. I have what I call an attendance activity. It's not required. I tell them it's not for points, but I tell them the purpose of it is so that I know your body was here and that something went through your brain besides just the neurochemicals that are in everybody's brain. And one of the things and they do it in writing, I don't ask them to say it out loud, but I want them to admit it to themselves. One idea that we talked about in class that they want to remember, take with them, and apply in their lives. And I found that doing that, I found a lot of the students, even when they don't put a lot in their attendance activities, more of the students are saying, I want to remember this idea, maybe better time management, or being more of a creator rather than thinking and thinking less like a victim. So that's my comment.
Okay. So Mary Catherine, one of the things that I encouraged my students to do ages ago, whenever I was still in the classroom, was outlining chapters in their own words. Picking out, again, coming from a radiology background, our textbooks were set up where important things were either noted as penguin facts or in bold. Go through a chapter and pick out everything in bold, because if it's in bold, it's important, right? And those types of outlining strategies can help students to master the material when they've read it. They've read it once, they write down the stuff that's all in bold, they go back and read over what was in bold and how did that relate to what was in the chapter. So that's something that you could try.
Thank you.
Leah.
Yes, study skills are so important. I loved what Adrian said earlier about a plan of action. When a student becomes behind, I ask them to have a meeting with me over the computer and we look at, okay, it's not realistic for you to make up 5 quizzes and an exam all in one weekend. Let's talk about how we're going to space this out and how we're going to, we need to meet this deadline before we can focus on the next deadline. Let's first, study chapter 1 before we take the chapter 1 test. And that also goes back to what Dr. Christina was talking about in making sure that they don't attempt something that they're not yet prepared for. So both of those are really, really great strategies. And I also love the, if you're not encouraging them to take the notes in their own words, offering a sentence stem or, an outline that they can follow, because a lot of students even struggle with basic note taking. English may not be their first language. They may not be used to being in an academic setting. They may have been at work for, 30 years and now they're coming trying to do a second career. So these skills that we take for granted, they may struggle to build those skills on their own, and anything that we can do to give them a little nudge in the right direction is, in my mind, helpful.
Exactly. Adrian?
So you had asked us earlier, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you had asked us earlier if we thought that these faculty book clubs were working, and I just kind of wanted to put on record that I do believe that they are working. Not that, we all want to attend 1,000 meetings a week, but I do really enjoy these once a month or once every 2 weeks, the AI ones and this one, because we don't always get to see each other, right? We're kind of, all over the place, all over a bunch of different campuses. So I would say, my own personal opinion, this has been super helpful. And I know when I first started here, we did, and Sheila and I were talking about this the other day, we did a faculty book club on body language. And so I think sometimes it doesn't always have to be just about classroom stuff, right? It could be about just different topics that are coming up, that also affect our classroom. So.
Okay. Good thoughts. Okay, so our next meeting will be March 19th, which is not quite a month because, we put this one off a week or almost a week due to unforeseen circumstances. And I'll try and get that link out a week ahead of time so that y'all have time to prepare for the next one. Next session, we're going to be doing more of this sharing ideas. I'm going to pull some things out of not just the on-course textbook, but go back to hitting pause and growth mindset to give some little talking points for us to discuss. Feel free to ask any questions that you have during these things. Mary Catherine, great question, great comment. That's the kind of thing that we want to do during these seminars, is share ideas, talk things out, learn from each other. That's what it's about. We're all trying to do the same thing, and that's help students succeed. Thank you very much for your time. We have been here for 50 minutes. We started at 2. It is 2:50 according to my clock. So I think we did good. This was recorded. The recording will be put into the QEP space so that those who could not attend will be able to hear all of the good things that we discussed today. Thank everybody for your time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Bye.
Stop recording.